Okay, wonderful. Today we are going to explore the fascinating world of virus and the structure. By the end of the short session, you will know exactly where the virus is and identify its core parts. Are you ready? Let's get started. Structure and shape of virus. Presented by Elvira Wiranito. Learning objectivities. Number 1. Describe the characteristic and structure of virus. Number 2. Describe the various shapes of virus. Number 3. Understand the characteristic of virus as living organism and as non-living objects. Next, what is virus? A virus is a very small particle that can only live and reproduce inside the body of another living organism or obligate parasite. Viruses do not have cells like most living organisms. Therefore, viruses are classified as acellular organisms. History of virus discovery. The discovery of virus began with research on diseases affecting tobacco plants. Several scientists who contributed to the discovery of virus include: Number 1, Adolf Meyer, discovered that tobacco leaf disease could be transmitted through sweat. However, no bacteria were found, suggestion that the causative agent was smaller than bacteria.
Let's begin with Adolf Meyer in 1883. Meyer was studying a mysterious disease affecting tobacco plants. He discovered that the disease could be transmitted from our plant to another through the shape of infected leaves. However, he could not find any bacteria responsible for this disease. This led him to suspect that the infection agent was much smaller than bacteria, although he could not identify it at the time.
And number 2, Dmitry Ivanovsky demonstrated the infectious agent could pass through bacterial filters and still cause infection.
Next came Dmitry Ivanovsky in 1892. Ivanovsky performed an important experiment using a porcelain filter designed to trap bacteria. Surprisingly, after the infected plant had passed through the filter, it was still able to infect healthy tobacco plants. This remarkable discovery proved that the infection agent was capable of passing through bacterial filters, meaning it was much smaller than any known bacterium.
Number 3, Martinus Beijerinck concluded that the agent could only reproduce with living cells and named the virus.
A few years later, in 1897, he concluded that infections again could only reproduce inside living cells. Unlike bacteria, it could not grow on artificial culture media. Beijerinck named this new infection agent Pyrrhus, a Latin word meaning poison. His work laid the foundation for the modern concept of virus.
And number 4, Wendy Stanley showed the virus could be crystallized, indicating the past characteristics similar to non-living matter.
Finally, in 1935, Wendell Stanley made another groundbreaking contribution. Stanley successfully purified and crystallized the tobacco mosaic virus or TMV. This demonstrated the virus could behave like non-living substance outside a host cell. At the same time, they become active and reproduce only after entering living cell. This unique characteristic explains why viruses are often considered to exist on the boundary between living and non-living things.
For the next, a characteristic of virus. Number one is extremely small in size.
The first characteristic is that viruses are extremely small. Most viruses means only about 20 to 3000 nanometers in size. Because of their tiny size, they cannot be seen with a regular light microscope. Instead, scientists use an electron microscope to observe them.
And number two, acellular or do not have cell.
The second characteristic is the viruses are acellular, which means they are not made of cell. Unlike living organisms, viruses do not have a cell membrane, cytoplasm, or nucleus. The structure is much simple.
Number three, like acellular organelles.
Third, viruses lack cellular organelles. They do not have mitochondria, ribosomes, endoplasmic reticulum, or any other organelles needed to carry out metabolic activities. This means viruses cannot produce energy or make proteins by themselves.
Number four, contain only the type of nucleic acid, DNA or RNA.
The fourth characteristic is that a virus contains only one type of nucleic acid. A virus carries either DNA or RNA as its genetic materials, but never both at the same time. These genetic materials store the information needed for the virus to reproduce inside a host cell.
And number five, obligate parasite or live inside host cell.
The fifth characteristic is that viruses are obligate parasites. That means they can only survive and reproduce inside the cell of a living host. They depend entirely on the host cell machinery to reproduce new virus particles.
Number six, cannot live and reproduce outside a host cell, and the next can be crystallized.
And the sixth characteristic is that viruses cannot live or reproduce outside a host cell. When they are outside a living cell, viruses remain inactive and cannot perform any biological process. They become active only after infecting a suitable host. Finally, viruses can be crystallized. This is one of their most unusual characteristics. Outside a host cell, virus can form crystal-like structure, showing properties similar to non-living matter. However, once they enter a living cell, they become active and begin to reproduce. This is why viruses are often considered to exist between living and non-living things.
Next, virus structure. Virus structure. Virus consists of two main components. Number one, nucleic acid or DNA or RNA function as a genetic materials that control their activities.
The first and most important component is the genetic materials. Every virus contains genetic materials in their form, or either DNA or RNA, but never both at the same time. These genetic materials carries all the instructions needed for the virus to reproduce once it enters a host cell.
Number two, capsid, a protein that protects the nucleic acid.
The second component is the capsid. The capsid is a protective protein coat made up of many protein subunits called capsomeres. Its main function is to protect the vital genetic material from damage. In addition, the capsid helps determine the shape of the virus and plays an important role during the infection process.
Next, complex virus structure or bacteriophage. A certain virus, such as bacteriophage, process additional structure. Number one, head contains nucleic acid. Number two, neck contains the head and tail, and a tail used to attach to the host cell.
So, why is understanding the structure of virus important? Each part of a virus has a specific function. The genetic material stores hereditary information, the capsid protects it. The envelope provides additional protection, and spikes allow the virus to recognize and enter host cell. Understand this structure helps scientists develop vaccines, antiviral drugs, and better diagnostic methods to prevent and control viral disease.
Okay, next, types of virus shape and examples. Number one, rod-shaped virus. A long-tailed cylindrical shape. For example, TMV or tobacco mosaic virus. Number two, a spherical virus, ball-like a shape. For example, HIV and influenza virus. Number three, virulent virus, long, thread-like a shape. For example, Ebola virus. Number four, polyhedral virus, many-sided geometrical shape. For example, adenovirus and complex virus or T-shape has a head and tail structure. For example, bacteria. This is for example virus shape.
Let's start with the tobacco mosaic virus or TMV. TMV is one of the first viruses ever discovered. It has a rod-shaped structure and contains RNA as its genetic materials. This virus infects tobacco plants and causes a mosaic pattern on the leaves, reducing the plant's ability to perform photosynthesis and affecting crop production. Next is the influenza virus, commonly known as the flu virus. This virus has a spherical shape and also contains RNA. It infects the human respiratory system and spreads easily through droplets when an infected person coughs or sneezes. Every year, influenza affects millions of people around the world. The third example is the human immunodeficiency virus or HIV. Like the influenza virus, HIV is generally spherical and contains RNA. However, HIV attacks the body's immune system, especially CD4 T cell, making it difficult for the body to fight infection. If left untreated, HIV can develop into acquired immunodeficiency syndrome or AIDS. And now, let's move on to the Ebola virus. Unlike the previous virus, Ebola has a long filamentous or thread-like shape. It contains RNA and causes a severe disease called Ebola virus disease, which can lead to internal bleeding and has a high fatality rate. Fortunately, outbreaks can now be controlled more effectively drug repair diagnosis and vaccinational. And finally, we have the bacteriophage, also called a pig. This virus has a unique and complex structure with a head and a tail. Instead of infecting humans or plants, bacteriophage infect bacteria. They attack to the bacterial cell and inject their genetic materials, allowing them to reproduce inside the bacterial host. Today, bacteriophage are also being studied as a promising alternative to antibiotics in treating bacterial infection. Now that we have learned about the example of virus, let's move on to another interesting topic, the different shape of virus. Although viruses are microscopic, they come in a remarkable variety of shape. Interestingly, the shape of a virus is determined by its capsid, which is the protein coat that surrounds and protects its genetic materials. These different shapes help viruses infect specific host cells and survive in different environments. Let's look at each type one by one. The first type is the rod-shaped virus, also known as the helical virus. As the name suggests, this virus has a long cylindrical shape. One well-known example is the tobacco mosaic virus, or TMV. It infects tobacco plants and was the first virus ever discovered. Its simple rod-like structure allows it to remain stable while spreading to plant tissues. The second type is the spherical virus. This is probably the shape most people imagine when they hear the word virus. Examples include the influenza virus and HIV. These viruses have a roughly spherical appearance with protein spikes on their surface. The spikes help the virus recognize, attach to, and enter host cell. Next is the filamentous virus. Filamentous viruses are long, thin, and thread-like. A famous example is the Ebola virus. Unlike spherical virus, Ebola has a flexible filament shape that can appear curved or even looped. This unique structure is one of these distinguishing characteristics. The third type is the polyhedral virus, also called an icosahedral virus. This virus has many flat, triangular faces that form a symmetrical geometric shape. A common example is the adenovirus, which causes respiratory infection, conjunctivitis, and several other diseases. The shape provides excellent protection for the virus genetic materials. And finally, we have the complex virus. This is the most unique type because it does not fit into the previous categories. A perfect example is the bacteriophage. It has a head that contains genetic material, a tail and tail fibers that allow it to attach to bacteria and inject its DNA into host cell. Unlike other virus, bacteriophage specially infect bacteria instead of plants or humans. So, why are these different shapes important? The shape of virus is not just about appearance. It plays a critical role in how the virus protects its genetic materials, attaches to host cell, infects its host, and spread from one organism to other. This video designed to help you better understand virus. Please watch and take it all in. Enjoy!
Chances are, in your life, you've had the common cold before. It can cause sneezing and coughing and can make you feel awful. The worst thing about the common cold is that you can take medications to help with the symptoms, but you really can't treat the actual cold with antibiotics like you would a strep throat infection or an infected tooth. Why? Well, let's talk about what causes it. A virus. The common cold is caused by a virus. While all living things are made of one or more cells, see the modern cell theory, viruses are not cells. Viruses aren't technically classified as living things since they lack many characteristics of life. But there is some debate in calling them non-living as well. Medications like antibiotics attack bacteria like E. coli, which are living cells. Antifungal medications can be used on fungi like athlete's foot, which are made of living cells. Viruses are not bacteria or fungi. You can't classify a virus as a prokaryote or a eukaryote either because it's not a cell. So what is their structure like? First of all, viruses are much, much smaller than cells. You typically are going to need an electron microscope in order to see a virus. Viruses come in many shapes. Our favorite one to draw is the bacteriophage. It sounds very fancy, but it's a type of virus that tends to attack bacteria. Despite this being our favorite to draw, know that the shape of viruses vary greatly. One thing all viruses have in common is that they have some type of genetic material. This genetic material can be in the form of DNA or RNA. Viruses usually have some kind of protein coat, also known as a capsid. The capsid can protect the DNA or RNA genetic material. Viruses can also have other structures. Some viruses package special enzymes with them. Some viruses have an outer envelope. These additions can be useful to the virus in virus replication. One thing that makes virus replication or reproduction unique is that they can't replicate without a host. And it's their reproducing that tends to be a problem for its host, whether the host is you, in the case of the common cold, or an insect, plant, this bacterium. Viruses tend to be very specific for the host that they're going to infect, but anything that is alive can be a host because cells have the machinery that viruses need in order to replicate. We're going to talk about two types of viral replication cycles. The first one is the lytic cycle. In the lytic cycle, the virus, remember very selective, attaches to a host cell. It often binds to a receptor that this cell has, which gives it access to attach. The virus can inject either its DNA or RNA, depending on what kind of genetic material it has, into the cell. Some types of viruses are actually taken inside the cell themselves. Now, you would think that the cell would notice viral DNA or RNA or an entire virus that has been taken in, but in many cases, it does not. It takes the genetic material from the virus and it starts following the instructions, which in this case is very bad because the instructions tell it to make copies of the virus. The cell uses its own resources to start building. It starts making so many copies of the virus that it can cause the cell membrane of the host to rupture, explode, lyse. So what happens is now that these new viral copies, they can get out of the cell and go and infect other cells. This is known as the lytic cycle. By the way, the lysing of the cell membrane is a very bad thing for the cell. The cell cannot survive without its cell membrane. The other cycle is called the lysogenic cycle, and I like to remember this is the longer word, so I like to think of this as the longer, sneaky cycle. Viruses that go through this cycle tend to do the same thing at the beginning. They inject their genetic material, but this time, the genetic material stays hidden in the host genetic material. What happens is that when the host makes new cells, it replicates its own genetic material and the viral genetic material. Then those daughter cells make new cells, and they also replicate their own genetic material and the viral genetic material, and so on. This is the lysogenic cycle. That may not seem like a problem, but it really becomes one if the virus gets triggered to go into the lytic cycle from that point, because then all those cells that had the viral genetic material can start assembling viruses. And as far as what triggers it to go into the lytic cycle, it can vary. It could be a chemical trigger, for example, or a lack of food for the host. Going back to the common cold, a lot of times it has to run its course. Your immune system will typically take care of it, and medications can help with the symptoms so that they don't feel as bad. But unfortunately, some viruses are extremely complicated, like HIV, a virus that can lead to AIDS. Like most viruses, it is very specific. It binds to a CD4 glycoprotein that is found on the surface of specific cells, such as helper T cells. The problem about this particular target is that helper T cells play an important role in protecting the body and the immune system. Since HIV goes after these immune cells, it can make a person that is infected with HIV vulnerable to other infections. There are medications that have been developed to help keep HIV from replicating as quickly, and there continues to be research into looking into ways to keep the virus from attaching, because if the virus can't attach, it can't insert its genetic material. A problem that continues to be a challenge is that many viruses, including HIV, can mutate, so a treatment developed against a certain virus type may not work on a mutated form. So, with our talk about viruses, you might wonder, is there anything positive about viruses? Well, some viruses can play a useful role in gene therapy. Definitely something to explore more. Also remember how we mentioned that viruses can go after other organisms, like insects, for example. A virus that targets pest insects could be an alternative to a chemical pesticide. One such example virus that you may want to explore is the nuclear polyhedrosis virus. Still, it's important to consider that whenever talking about any kind of pesticide, chemical or viral, there could be consequences in the ecosystem. Well, that's it for the Amoeba Sisters, and we remind you to stay curious.
Conclusion. Number 1, viruses are microscopic acellular organisms that can only survive within host cell. Number 2, a virus has a small, simple structure consisting of nucleic acid and capsid, and they exhibit various shapes, including rod shape, spherical, filamentous, polyhedral, and complex forms. And a virus also possesses unique characteristics because they can be considered both living organism and non-living object.
Congratulations, you have completed today's lesson on the virus. Today we have learned about the definition of virus, their unique characteristic, structure, different shape, example of virus, and the scientists who contributed to their discovery. Remember, although viruses are microscopic and cannot be seen with the naked eye, they have a significant impact on human health, agriculture, and the environment. By understanding virus, we can better appreciate the importance of scientific research, disease prevention, and the development of vaccines and antiviral treatment. Learning is a continuous journey. Keep exploring, stay curious, and never stop asking questions because every discovery begins with curiosity. Thank you for your attention and active participation. See you in the next biology lesson. Stay healthy, stay curious, and keep learning.
Alright, time is up to wrap up today. A virus has two main parts, which are the capsid on the outside and the genetics material inside. Thank you for your attention. Stay healthy and see you next week. Goodbye.